Okay, my second interviewee is Dabney. So, Dabney, how do you define age?
I define age as what you pick up from life over the years. So, it's not necessarily how many years you have, but the quality of them.
And when does one become an adult, do you think?
Well, coming back to my last answer, again, it doesn't have to do with age. It has to do when you can efficiently take care of yourself, not only yourself, but those around you.
And what does it mean to be an adult?
To be an adult. Well, not only from a financial standpoint, but it also comes from just being fiscally and socially responsible.
What is old?
Old is when you lose how to have fun.
And when do you think one becomes old?
When they lose their joy. You always have to have stuff in your life that makes you feel young or act young.
So would you pick an age for that, or it just depends?
If I had to pick an age where I feel like I'm gonna be old, I say 55.
Retire, or yeah.
When I'm about to retire, hopefully.
When you get free coffee at McDonald's. When should we be able to vote, and why?
I think the voting age at 18 is fine because you're starting to become more aware of the world, especially with that time in people's lives when they're getting out of high school. Maybe, hopefully, their world's opening up. Hopefully, people start to take advantage of that more than they are right now.
When do you think that we should be able to drive?
Definitely not 16, I'll tell you that. From personal experience.
Yeah.
I think learning at 16 is good, but legally, I feel like it should be 18.
When do you think that we should be able to drink?
I think 21's okay. Just because I know that some irresponsible, people ruin it, but for the most part, most of the 18-year-olds I know, I wouldn't want them being able to buy alcohol.
Yeah. When should we be able to get married?
Well, personally, I think you should wait till you're almost 30. Because people, at least in my experience, change a lot in their 20s, and I think it's kind of foolish to get married in your early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
As is displayed by the current divorce rates.
How do you feel about getting old?
Well, I feel pretty good about it, just as from a comfort standpoint. Everyone always focuses on age, but what they don't focus on is actually becoming comfortable with yourself. That's a work in progress for everybody.
What, if anything, scares you about getting old, and why?
Well, losing my older family members, of course, is scary. Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one.
All right, well, thank you. So my third interviewee is Hank. So, Hank, how do you define age?
Age is a feeling you have in your mind. You can think you're young, you can think you're old. It can go either way. It's an individual thing.
And when does one become an adult, do you think?
One becomes an adult, I think truly an adult, when they have children. This is what I think that defining moment is.
What does it mean to be an adult? Okay, so what does it mean to be an adult?
I think to be an adult means to be able to take care of yourself on your own and be completely independent from other people.
And what is old?
Old is in your mind. Some people think it's when you're 30, 40, 50. I still think I'm young, personally.
So if you had to pick an age, what would you say is old?
To me, an old age would be 90 and above.
When does one become old?
One becomes old when they feel old, when they physically feel old or mentally.
When should we be able to vote and why?
Controversial subject. I got drafted once and could have gone to Vietnam but couldn't vote. So I think maybe an exclusion for people in the service to be 18 to be able to vote. Other than that, 21 is fair age.
When should we be able to drive and why?
We should be able to drive when we can pass tests. And the age now seems pretty fair on average.
When should we be able to drink and why?
Drinking, that's very controversial too. I would say 21's a good age. A lot of people do it before, but they're just experimenting, kind of prepping for 21.
And how do you feel about getting old?
I feel good about it. I look at life as a lifespan, and you're just living it out. So I look forward to anything that's coming.
And what, if anything, scares you about getting old and why?
What scares me about getting old is losing my mental capabilities. The physical, not so bad, but the mental really, I don't want any part of that.
Well, thank you, Hank.
Well, thank you.
So I picked questions on age because it's very interesting. I learned a lot in class about this. Just how we view it, age and getting old as being younger is completely different than older people viewing getting old and the things that scare you about getting old. I mean, you can see in the responses that I had with my 3 interviewees, both Lane and Dabney are younger, and Hank is almost 70, and you can see that Hank isn't scared about getting old, and being an adult and defining age is different for an older person than it is for a younger person. It's not necessarily confined to a certain age, but more about life milestones. And getting old isn't scary. It might have something to do with Hank's great health. I think that maybe if he wasn't in such great health, then, it might be scary to get older. But Hank's dad is 95, still kicking. He, just sold his house and lives with his daughter now, but at 95 is still very coherent, remembers everything, and is still living a great life. So, getting old isn't scary. In the responses, you see as younger people, we've put an age on things. It's a numerical number. Whereas from my person that has lived a longer life, it's not an age. It's about learning, basically. Similarities and differences across the cohorts. Both. A lot of people are scared to be a constant, but I think everyone has their differences, and when people should be able to vote, drink, drive, and get married because of life experiences, as well as what they think is old. But as a younger generation, I think that ageism plays a huge part because we berate the old. We think they're senile. We don't understand it. And I think that has a lot to do with our culture because in America we put older people in nursing homes. We don't deal with it anymore. We just take it, we take it out of the equation and we don't even think about it. So we don't understand getting old. We don't see it. I think that's one of the differences that I would notice about the demographics, because in other places, people live with their elderly. They have multiple generations living in a home. They don't put their elderly in nursing homes. They take care of them. That's a huge difference from the American way. What I learned and found interesting and surprising is that getting old isn't scary. We should relish our lives, live it to our fullest, but there's still so much to do when you're old. And what is old? it is in your mind and how old you think. And I started talking about how I'm 30 and I'm old, but I'm not. And Hank's right that it is all in your head and it's what you think is old. It's not necessarily an age. And for him to say 95, it's pretty crazy because that is old. Especially the average life expectancy right now in America is 78. So 95 is really old compared to that. I was thinking today about the phrase act your age.